Halloween is the #1 time of year for the most human sacrifice to the devil on the planet. People go, that's ridiculous. Halloween's just about candy. It's not. In fact, in New York City, Father LeBar was telling me that it's the #1 week leading up to Halloween where the most homeless go missing.
You already know what it is. It's your boy Laid Back with another reaction, another review, another episode. Hey, Halloween. You up to bat. Blah. It's your boy Laid Back. Welcome back to my channel. Hey, two things we gotta do. You gotta hit that subscribe button. I'm drinking this water. You already know what it is, man. You are the prize in 2025. You are the prize in 2025. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the notification bell. Stay up to date with all the videos. We back. Before we get into it, man, if you haven't copped the merch, it's out, it's fresh, it's the dopest. You should get it. I'm just saying. But we back, man, with another compilation, man. We got the origins of Halloween. We already know what time of year it is, man. So we here. I don't know what to expect, but this gonna be interesting. Share this with somebody who you know loves Halloween, man. Just share it with one person. It don't matter. But let's go ahead and get into it. Fire Squad, what's popping? Let's get it.
Why do we celebrate Halloween? Well, it actually started as a Celtic tradition called Samhain, which was on October 31st and November 1st. It was their New Year's celebration. It commemorated the end of summer and the start of the cold, dark half of the year. And also, at the time, the winter was actually a deadly time of the year. Imagine, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, it was hard to survive through winter. A lot of people died. And so, at the time, they thought that, in this transition from the summer half of the year to the dark, cold winter time of the year, that the spirits or ghosts from the other side had access to our physical world and would come here and cause mischief. And so what they would do is they would light big bonfires and dress up in animal costumes to try and scare off the ghosts. So they would dress up in animal costumes and light these big fires to ward off ghosts. And then they would take this bonfire, which was kind of a symbol of good luck, and they would take logs from this big bonfire and use those logs to start fires in their own homes, in their own fireplaces, to kind of give them good luck for the winter season, the dangerous, the deadly season. So that's how Halloween started. Now, how did it become called Halloween? Well, in the 8th century, the Pope at the time declared that November 1st would be called All Saints' Day, and sometimes it was called All Hallows' Day, because hallow meant to revere someone as holy. And so it was called All Hallows' Day, and the day before it, October 31st, would have been known as All Hallows' Eve, just like you have New Year's Day and New Year's Eve. So you have All Hallows' Day, November 1st, and All Hallows' Eve on October 31st, and eventually All Hallows' Eve became Halloween. And on November 2nd, they had All Souls' Day, which is a day to remember all the people that passed away. And part of that tradition was for people to dress up as devils, angels, or saints. And so that's part of where the dressing up in costume comes from. All right, but where did the candy and trick-or-treating come from? Well, the idea of going door to door and asking for food or treats actually originates in many different cultures, many different ways. For example, in Scotland, there was a practice of guising, where people would go door to door and perform a small play or performance and ask for food or treats. There was something called a soul cake that was often given out. And even in ancient Greece, there was a tradition where kids would go door to door dressed as birds, and they would sing a little song, and they would demand to get treats or food. Otherwise, they would cause mischief to their house.
What?
They would play a trick on them. But the term trick or treat originated many years later in Ontario, Canada, because at the time, in the early 1900s, Halloween was a time that teenagers would cause mischief or vandalize the town. And so homeowners kind of made this agreement where they said, hey, we'll give you candy as an offer to not vandalize my house. And so kids would come to the house, knock on the door, and say trick or treat, in the sense of give us candy or we will mess with your house. And so people give them candy. Let me know in the comments what you're dressing up for Halloween this year. I'll see you in the next one. Stay curious and have a happy Halloween.
Do your own research.
Have you ever wondered why old Halloween costumes feel so unsettling? It's not just you, and the explanations are surprising. Back in the day, All Hallows' Eve was more tied to its pagan roots, when spirits were believed to roam the earth. Modern Halloween is about standing out, but these costumes were made to blend in with the specters on their special nights. Being handmade also gave an extra eeriness, as did the muted lighting and somber expressions of old photos, so it's natural to ask,
I don't like Halloween. I don't like none of this shit.
Did you know that Halloween actually has its roots in ancient paganism? If you've ever wondered why people actually celebrate Halloween, then I'm going to give you a quick history on it. So Halloween actually traces its roots back to the ancient pagan Celtic festival called Samhain. So Samhain was actually a festival that was celebrating the harvest and also celebrated the crossing over of one season into another. However, the actual word Halloween is a Christian word that comes from the phrase All Hallows Eve. This being the night before the Christian holiday of Hallows Eve, which was to celebrate the death of all the saints. So on this day, the Catholic Church would honour all the saints who had passed and pray for their dearly departed souls. So many historians actually believe that when Christianity was being spread throughout Europe, the church decided to put the new Christian celebrations on the days of previous pagan celebrations so that it was easier for the people to assimilate. So it makes sense that All Hallows Day, praying for the saints, falls on the same day as the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain. This actually also explains why another Christian holiday, being Christmas, is held on December the 25th, because that is actually the date of the ancient Roman festival of Sol Invictus. People don't actually know when exactly Jesus was born, but again, when they were Christianizing Europe, people already celebrated Sol Invictus on the 25th, so it made sense to have it then, again to ease in with assimilation. The ancient Celts and other ancient societies also believed that Halloween, or the date of the end of October, was the time when the veil between the living and the dead was at its thinnest. So it made sense for them to dress up as these spirits and ghosts and ghouls, so that if the spirits were to see them, they would leave them alone and see them as one of their own.
Hell nah.
Which is where the tradition of dressing up on Halloween actually comes from. So next time you're wearing a costume or you're celebrating Halloween, remember that you are one of a long line of people dating back nearly 1,000 years who have practiced this tradition.
Not me. Charge.
Halloween is a satanic holiday, and as an ex-witch, I'm going to explain why. So on this night, the pagans believed that the veil between the spiritual realm and the earthly realm was the thinnest. And so this means that they believe that ghosts and ghouls and goblins and demons would actually cross over and walk among the people. And so this is where the tradition of dressing up actually began, because they wanted to blend in with the demons. They didn't want to be tricked or cursed by them. So they thought, well, if we dress up and we blend in with the demonic entities, they'll think that we're one of them and they won't curse us or trick us, right? So trick-or-treating and dressing up, this is the roots of that. There's a lot of things that have been normalized in our culture, but if you think about it, this is a day that is dedicated to darkness, witchcraft, demons. This is the only time of year where you can walk around a store or drive through your neighborhood and see literally corpses and demons and horrible demonic creatures just plastered up everywhere. It's just not true that Halloween only comes from All Saints Day. That is what the church tried to cover up. Samhain, they tried to replace it and have people celebrate the saints instead of demonic entities and dressing up like demons. But obviously it didn't work very well, because when I think about October 31st, I think about goblins, ghosts, witches, monsters, horror movies, all of these things that glorify the darkness. As an ex-witch, when you see people dressing up like witches for Halloween and wearing pointy hats and putting up tombstones and spell books, and they're playing with this stuff like it's a joke, like it's a costume, and then when I look back on my life, when I was involved in witchcraft and the occult, I was so tormented by demonic spirits. I was so depressed. I was so anxious. I was so empty. Like, witchcraft ruined my life and left me empty. And it's not a cute costume. It destroys people. So those are just a few reasons and a little bit of history about why I don't celebrate Halloween, and I also don't think Christians should, as an ex-witch. Love you guys. If you like this video, you can follow for more, because this whole page is dedicated to exposing the darkness. My podcast, I have ex-witches that have come on the podcast.
What?
And ex-Satanists, high-ranking warlocks who have come on the podcast and explain. I had one warlock who got married on Halloween. We did an interview and he explains why. And then of course my new book is all about exposing the darkness. So if you want to learn more about that, give me a follow. I'll see you guys in the next video. God bless.
Do your own research, man, for sure.
It's that time of the year again, so let's look at the ancient origins of Halloween. The origins of Halloween go back thousands of years to the ancient Celtic tribes. Now, these ancient people practiced a festival called Samhain, which means end of summer. The Celtic tribes believed that on the day of Samhain, the boundary between the world of the living and the world of the dead became blurred, and the return.
I wonder why some people say the Celtic. I guess that was their name, and then some people put the pagan in front of it. And some people don't even say the pagans at all. They just say Celtic. Y'all let me know in the comments, like, Is it a reason why? Some people say pagan, some people don't. Let me know in the comments.
The return of souls to our world was celebrated with fire. By the 1st century AD, the Roman Empire had taken over the vast majority of lands in which Celtic-speaking populations resided. During these centuries, the Celtic festival of Samhain was combined with 2 Roman festivals. Though it seems that the origins of Halloween were not completely limited to pagan influences. By the 9th century AD, Christianity had spread across much of the Celtic-speaking lands. The Church introduced All Hallows Day on November 1st and All Souls Day on November 2nd to honor the dead, but it was believed that they were trying to replace the day of Samhain with their own version. This new holiday had parades, bonfires, and costumes. With the colonization of the Americas, immigrants from Scotland and Ireland, modern Celtic-speaking populations, brought over these celebrations to the Americas, which became widely practiced by the 19th century. The traditions we associate with Halloween today were mostly derived from these immigrant communities. By the 20th century, the Halloween we're all familiar with today came to be. However, trick-or-treating and pumpkin carving would probably be unrecognizable to an ancient Celtic pagan.
They ain't do all that, huh?
Fun fact, Halloween traces its roots back more than 2,000 years to the Celtic festival of Samhain, which ended on November 1st and marked the start of their new year. The Celts believed that on the night of October 31st, the separation between the world of the living and the dead was thinnest and would allow the spirits of the dead to walk among them. So they would leave offerings and light bonfires for the spirits, and also dress up, hoping the dead spirits wouldn't recognize them. In the 7th century, when the Catholic Church began converting pagan holidays into Catholic ones, they changed November 1st into All Saints' Day, but the night before still had bonfires and costumes under its new name, All Hallows' Eve.
Converting pagan holidays to Christian holidays.
In 16th century England, people would go door to door on All Saints' Day and offer to pray for the homeowner's dead loved ones in exchange for food, cakes, or money. In Scotland and Ireland, children would dress up in costumes and go door to door and sing or recite poetry in exchange for treats. As people immigrated to the US, they brought Hallows' Eve with them, but Halloween didn't really take off until after the Second World War, and the commercialism boom of the 1950s turned it into what it is today.
Halloween is the #1 time of year for the most human sacrifice to the devil on the planet. People go, that's ridiculous. Halloween's just about candy. It's not. In fact, in New York City, Father LeBar was telling me that it's the #1 week leading up to Halloween where the most homeless go missing. There's these unmarked vans that come around and offer to take them to shelters and get meals for them, and they just bind them and they keep them and they satanically sacrifice them on Halloween. But there is a story I came upon about a year ago of a Swiss banker, and he was also brought into this whole group where they were doing human sacrifice, and he knew he was going to have to do it at some point. And so he went to a journalist and recorded everything. And he said in his, basically his story of what was going on, I don't expect to be alive in a week. 3 days later, he was found face down in a bog, dead.
The reason why the demons are allowed to afflict people is that ultimately they're the instrument of our sanctification. And God allows them into our life because by having to combat them, we attain a level of virtue and sanctity that we wouldn't. We would just be mediocre spiritually a lot. And in fact, some of the holiest people I've ever met were people who, they're possessed, but then they start the spiritual battle, they start developing the virtue, and they become some of the holiest people I've met.
Whoa.
Let's get into the history of Halloween. Halloween's origins date back to the ancient Celtic festivals of Samhain. The Celts celebrated their new year on November 1st, a time marking the end of summer and the beginning of a dark, cold winter, a time often associated with human death. The Celts believed that on the night before the new year, the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead became blurred. On the night of October 31st, they would celebrate the Samhain to celebrate the ghosts of the dead coming back to the earth. To commemorate this event, Druids, or Celtic priests, would create these huge sacred bonfires, and the people would bring forth animals and crops to sacrifice to the Celtic deities. During the celebration, the Celts would also wear costumes consisting of animal skins and heads in an attempt to read each other's fortune. When the celebration was over, they would relit their hearth fires, which was extinguished earlier in the evening from the sacred bonfire, to help protect them for the winter to come. The holidays celebrated today are only rooted in paganism, witchcraft, and idolatry. Know what you believe before you just celebrate something blindly.
I agree with her.
Today we're talking about Halloween, where it originated, and as Christians, whether we should celebrate or not. Let me start by saying I understand many celebrate Halloween because it's been a tradition for a long time and it's normal in our society. This is not a video to tell anyone what they should or shouldn't do, but a video to bring out the history of Halloween, which many are unaware of. For all things in life, it's important to know what we're dealing with. If we align ourselves with a certain practice, we should at least understand the origins of that practice. So let's get into it. Halloween originated in medieval times from a death festival known as Samhain, which Celtics and their religious leaders known as Druids celebrated. Their New Year's Day was November 1st, so their New Year's Eve was October 31st. They believed on their New Year's Eve, the spirits of the dead could pass through and walk amongst the living. They would worship, idolize, and make burnt sacrifices to these spirits. The Celtics believed that by sacrificing to these spirits, the spirits would return the favor and provide information about their futures. So how does Halloween tie in with Christianity? The Roman invasion happened, where parts of the Celtic regions were conquered. The Romans wanted the Celtics to convert to Catholicism, and to make it easier for them, they manipulated them by inheriting the Celtic tradition of Samhain, but instead of worshiping the Celtics' dead ancestors, the Catholics wanted them to worship the dead martyrs of Catholicism. And this is how All Saints' Day or All Hallows' Day was created, which later became Halloween, which means the eve of All Hallows' Day. In Latin America, you have the Day of the Dead, again with people praying to the dead. Let's talk about the common activities or symbols of Halloween. Number 1, costumes. As previously mentioned, the Celtics believed during Samhain the spirits of the dead would walk amongst the living. To prevent themselves from being harmed by the evil spirits, they disguised themselves to look like them. This is where costumes come from. By wearing a costume, you're trying to blend in with the evil spirit so that the evil spirits don't harm you. Number 2, trick-or-treating. During Samhain, it's believed that the spirits of the dead would get hungry. And if they didn't have food or treats, they would become unsettled and begin to play tricks on people by tormenting them. For this reason, the Celtics would set out food and treats for the spirits. This is why trick-or-treaters say trick-or-treat. They're telling you to give them treats, or else they'll trick you or torment you. Number 3, jack-o'-lanterns. Jack-o'-lanterns represent the severed human heads that were cut off and used as decorations in the homes of the Druids. This is why jack-o'-lanterns have faces. The head was believed to have housed the soul. By carving pumpkins and using them as decorations around the house, it's a representation of the Druid practice of decorating their homes with sacrificed, severed human heads. There are varying accounts to the actual practices of Samhain. The ones I've highlighted seem to be the broader consensus, but regardless, what they do have in common is they're demonic and not of the Bible. So to answer my original question, as Christians, we're not to celebrate Halloween. Some people may argue they celebrate it in a tasteful way that doesn't harm anybody. You may not have the demonic intentions that lie within the tradition, but regardless, and whether you know it or not, you're still participating in helping keep a demonic tradition alive, one where the significance of each activity and symbol is very much intact. Conformity in this matter is far from harmless. Colossians chapter 2 verse 8 says, "Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Christ." We must follow Christ, not the Druids and traditions set up by early Catholic Church. What we should be celebrating are the feasts of the Bible. Many argue that we don't have to keep these feasts anymore, and many of these same people are the ones celebrating Halloween instead. As Bible followers, as Christians, we have to take a stand and help our fellow believers in Christ get back on the regimen God had created for us. Ephesians chapter 5 verse 11 says, "And have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them." And with that said, I hope you got some understanding. Don't forget to read your Bibles, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.
What do y'all think about that in the comments section? Should Christians celebrate Halloween? I need to know. Yes or no, and an explanation. Yes, we should because blah, 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 or no, because blah, blah, blah. I'm going to be reading some of these comments, man.
Today, Monday, October 31st, is Halloween. But how did Halloween become Halloween in the United States? Because even though Halloween has its origins with the ancient Celts, the holiday did not come to America with the first British colonists. The Puritans wanted nothing to do with either the pagan or the Catholic practices associated with Halloween. Although it should be noted that in the middle and southern colonies there was greater tolerance for Halloween-like harvest celebrations and play parties where neighbors would gather to remember departed family members, tell each other's fortunes, sing songs, and dance. Halloween, as we think of it, arrived in America with the millions of immigrants who flooded into the country in the second half of the 19th century, most notably the Irish who were fleeing the Irish potato famine. The Irish and the Scots brought their October 31st traditions of mumming, guising, and souling, as well as ideas about supernatural beings, sorcery, and divination attached to the holiday. Through their influence, Americans began dressing in costumes on Halloween and begging food and money from house to house. They also might play tricks like rattling windows, tying doors shut, uprooting gardens, moving farm equipment to unusual places, or other acts of petty vandalism made to look like some paranormal activity had been the cause. And while around the turn of the century, civic leaders were trying to shape Halloween celebrations into something less about ghosts and pranks and more about community activities with parades and parties, by the 1920s and 30s, tricks and vandalism had increased to such an extent that some cities were considering banning the holiday entirely.
Really?
But a wiser solution was arrived at, and community organizations, civic and religious authorities, and neighborhood families began to program parties, carnivals, and costume parades that they hoped would redirect young people's energy into less destructive activities. According to Lisa Morton, author of the 2012 book, Trick or Treat, A History of Halloween, people pooled their resources and staged house-to-house parties. The first house might give out costumes, such as a white sheet to be ghosts or soot to smudge on kids' faces. The next house might give out treats. The next have a basement set up with a tiny haunt. This starts to morph into kids getting dressed up and going house to house trick-or-treating. In these years, costumes were primarily improvised. Along with the traditional ghosts, devils, and witches, they often represented characters on the fringes of society, such as hobos, pirates, and gypsies. But pop culture characters began to appear as well, with commercial costume manufacturers licensing characters like Popeye, Olive Oil, Little Orphan Annie, and Mickey Mouse. World War II and rationing had a dampening effect on American trick-or-treating, but it made a big post-war comeback, and by 1951 was firmly established in popular culture, with mass-produced costumes and candy companies creating special marketing campaigns around Halloween-themed treats. There was a blip in the 1960s when several frightening urban legends spread suspicions of Halloween candy having been tampered with, poisoned, or made dangerous with objects inserted into apples or other treats. These stories were investigated and have been, for the most part, thoroughly debunked, but they persist. However, this was actually good for the Halloween treats industry because it prompted a move away from homemade goodies to pre-packaged, factory-inspected items. Trick-or-treating rebounded from those scares and has gone on from strength to strength. Even COVID safety precautions didn't make much of a dent in the enthusiasm for Halloween. It merely forced it indoors for a couple of years. And now, American children are expected once again to be out in force this year, dressing up and begging for candy door to door. Most won't know that they are participating in a ritual that is many centuries old, or that they don't have the first Americans to thank for their fun. So stay safe and grab me some Good and Plenty while you're out there, because...
Because what?
What did Halloween look like in the Middle Ages? Well, we should probably start in Ireland. And we should probably start with its Celtic ancestor, Samhain. In Celtic tradition, there's this other world which has some features of the afterlife with souls of the dead, but also has fairies and sort of supernatural beings in it. And on Samhain, the souls of the dead, as well as the fairies, the Sidhe, could cross over into our world and visit or play tricks on people, that sort of thing. Samhain, being at the end of October, would mark the end of the harvest season and also incorporate these other elements of celebrating the souls of the dead, possibly things related to the Sidhe crossing over. And the celebration of Samhain would start in the evening, because the Celtic traditional timekeeping essentially had a day starting at sunset and going to sunset of the next day. So instead of sunrise to sunrise, or the BS we have right now, which is midnight to midnight, it was sunset to the sunset of what we would consider the next day. The point being, Samhain starts at dusk, basically. There are a lot of stories of mythic heroes doing things on Samhain. So there's the story of Angus Og driving monsters out of Ireland on Samhain. There's another story where the same guy falls in love with this princess, and then it turns out that she's been bewitched to turn into a swan for 1 year, and then back into a human for a year, and she switches back and forth every year on Samhain.
What?
So then he turns into a swan so he can be with her, and they fly away together. And then there's the story of the adventure of Nera, where the hero, Nera, ends up kind of accidentally bringing a hanged man back to life, and then ends up getting trapped in the underworld and has to warn the king about, the Sidhe coming so he can save the city, sort of thing. That's a very bad summary. Take it or leave it, this 19th century painting is supposed to represent the Sidhe. There also seems to have been the lighting of some ritual bonfires, and based off of archaeological evidence, it seems like Samhain may have been a day where there was kind of an unlimited supply of booze, possibly just because it was the end of the harvest and people were just brewing anything that was going bad, so it was a party day. And there are some sort of spooky traditional stories, but to me it gives the vibe of telling ghost stories at Christmas. It doesn't necessarily make the whole day seem sinister, it's just part of the tradition. So remember, Samhain goes from sundown to sundown, so in our modern calendar that would be October 31st to November 1st, roughly. Ireland was pretty Christianized by the 7th century. In the 8th century, Pope Gregory III moved the holiday of All Saints' Day from the spring over to November 1st. So that would coincide with the celebration of Samhain. And it seems like this was probably part of the medieval Catholic practice of syncretism, which was basically the idea of putting Catholic holidays and events on top of previously existing pagan or, non-Catholic cultural.
That is wild. That is wild to just be like, all right, so we got these things that we want to do on these certain days, but they already got these days where they celebrate certain things. So let's just put what we want on the days that they already celebrate, and that's wicked.
Traditions in order to ease the process of conversion, basically.
That's
so,
wicked.
All Saints' Day, November 1st. All Hallows Day, hallow meaning, if you've ever heard like hallowed ground, sacred, saintly, that sort of things. The same meaning of that word, All Hallows Day. The evening before All Hallows Day, All Saints' Day, All Hallows Evening, All Hallows Eve, All Halloween.
That didn't.
And then All Souls Day, a day about praying for all the dead souls, was added on November 2nd to kind of continue that vibe. That was added just before the year 1000, and it was pretty much all over Western Christian Europe by 1400. By the late 1400s, early 1500s, we have written references to Halloween, which suggests that it's been going on in some form for a while with certain traditions. So this one text from 1511 says, "We read in old time good people would on all Halloween date bake bread and deal it for Christian souls." So referencing making bread and giving it out to Christian souls. There are also records of people ringing the bells at churches like crazy around this time, and we have those records because Henry VIII and Elizabeth were like, please stop it, and ended up fining people to try to stop them from doing it, and it did not totally work. And then there's also text from 1598 referencing Halloween as the beginning of the Christmas season, so the end of the fall season, entering the extended Christmas season, and talking about on Halloween appointing the Lord of Misrule. So that would be a servant who would be overseeing certain festivities. From the writing here, these lords, beginning their rule at All Hallows Eve, continued in the same till the morrow after the Feast of the Purification, commonly called Candlemas Day, in which space there were fine and subtle disguising, masks, and mummeries. So, related to Halloween Day and bringing in a costume element. This is also something we have records of because in Scotland in 1555, they were like, we're trying to ban this, you guys are getting too crazy, and also the next century in England, them being like, this is too crazy, you gotta stop. The Edinburgh Charter of 1507 mentions a Hallow Fair, which was like a big week-long party fair celebration, just kind of getting your yayas out before the winter sets in, basically. And of course, that's 1507. That's not medieval times, but it could have existed before that and just not been written down. We do believe that kind of thing was happening, not writing things down. And then we get to the end of the 16th century, which is where we're seeing a lot of witch hunts, and we start seeing the association between Halloween and the devil and witches and evil and like really spooky stuff other than just, you know, the she who could be, you know, maybe spooky depending on how they're feeling. So taking all of this into consideration, if we rewind to the Middle Ages, what would Halloween look like then? And to be clear, we're talking about this whole zone, but especially Ireland and Scotland. We have a festival that has some association with death, the dead, and the afterlife through the combination of the traditional Celtic Samhain, as well as the addition of the newer Christian All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day. We have people drinking, partying, having fun, ringing bells, lighting bonfires. We probably have solars, like early trick-or-treaters going door to door, doing little songs and prayers for the dead in exchange for the soul cake, which is probably the bread that was referenced in the text we were looking at earlier, which would be a seeded round bread with, you know, spices, currants on top. If we take into account the Tudor accounts of the Lord of Misrule stuff and that being banned, then in Scotland, for example, we may see some costume elements with the Lord of Misrule being appointed. So kind of a fun party festival. More stuff was added into this tradition, including more stuff about the Sidhe. Especially, we see records from the 18th and 19th centuries of additional things being added to this, and just more detailed descriptions because that's closer to time to us. So more of the records survive from then, basically. And then we start seeing written records relating to Halloween in the late 19th century in the United States, incidentally following the potato famine and the wave of immigration from Ireland and also Scotland to the United States. And then, you know, we throw candy and pumpkins at it, and it becomes the, you know, modern American version that we see today, that us Americans think of when we think of Halloween. Anyway, please let me know if you have additional information about this topic, especially if you feel like I've been misrepresenting anything, especially if you are of Celtic background. I hope you can tell that I did try with the pronunciation, but I do like to think of the medieval people, the medieval peasants, having a nice party, having fun. Oh my god.
And celebrating dead people.
Point is, there's a pattern here. All these ex-Satanists, like, they all say the same thing. It's not just costumes and candy. It's blood rituals and hexes and spells and summoning and strategically targeting children and families through what we just call fun. No. This is all coming back to the point that Halloween is one of the highest unholy days on the occult calendar. Literally. It's because the devil is so jealous of God. He wants to be God so bad that he had to hijack this prophetic timeline this time of year and make it all about himself. You know, some covens even refer to this day, Halloween, as their sacred festival. And it is, the time when the veil is the thinnest and we sacrifice to demons, and these curses are deliberately released into neighborhoods and communities. While Christians are out here online debating whether it's just a matter of personal conviction, Satanists and witches are not debating it at all. The devil can't get you to just worship him outright, then he will settle for you participating in his feast and calling it casual. Scripture already told us this would happen. Ephesians 4:27 tells us not to give the devil a foothold. So when an ex-Satanist tells us this holiday is our holy day and God tells us don't touch what's detestable, what excuse do we have left? Church, please let that sink in. If even the devil's former generals are confessing that Halloween is the devil's holy day, then why would the bride of Christ want to dress up for the party? Halloween is not neutral, it is not innocent, it is not harmless. Okay, it is literally celebrated in the occult world as a sacred time of communion with demons. And the testimonies of people who used to live in that darkness should be enough to wake us up. If those who served Satan take this night seriously, guys, how much more should we as followers of Jesus be taking this night seriously too? And not just writing it off as you're being ridiculous, you're being legalistic. No, we're being consecrated. I really pray this is sobering someone up right now. I really do, because even if you can debate the history all day long, and even if you can manage to justify Halloween in your head, you cannot justify the spiritual consequences of participating in it. You just can't, okay? Because alignment always has fruit. When you align yourself with the kingdom of God, you will reap the fruit of righteousness and life. But when you align yourself with darkness, even innocently, you're going to reap the fruit of compromise, of confusion, and of oppression. And again, not superstition, guys, it's scripture. Why would Ephesians 4:27 tell us to give no opportunity to the devil if we couldn't give him an opportunity at all? You see, when you willingly participate in something that is consecrated to darkness, you're handing the devil territory to your life and guess what? To your home, period.
Thoughts in the comments.
Here's a rational Christian take on Halloween. Let me ask you a couple questions. If someone opens presents on December 25th, does that mean that they're an ally of Christianity or they worship Jesus? No. If a kid does an egg hunt on Easter, does that mean that he's worshiping God or he's an ally of Christianity? No. So if a kid wants to dress up as a superhero or a princess and get candy from their neighbors on Halloween, does that mean that they're worshiping Satan? No. Now, I'm not saying it's okay to go dress up as a demon and partake in things of darkness, but I'm just saying let's look at Halloween for what it actually is. A Catholic holiday that was celebrated as such up until the 1960s when Satanists all of a sudden said, hey, we want that holiday now, and the church basically said, okay. So let me ask you another question. If all the Satanists in the world came together and made a public declaration and said, hey, December 25th is our holiday now, and that's dedicated to the devil, would you still celebrate Christmas? I know I would. And yet that's the same exact thing that's happened to Halloween. It's never belonged to Satanists. And just because an ex-Satanist says so doesn't mean that that's the truth. Just because an ex-Satanist says that dressing up on Halloween is worshiping the devil doesn't mean that that's true. That's an argument fallacy that's called an appeal to authority, because they don't have the authority to make such claims in the first place. Now, there are many Christians that I know that disagree with me on this topic, and I honor and I respect them because this is an open-handed issue. It doesn't affect our salvation. So whichever way your conviction leads you, whether that's partaking in Halloween or not, trust that, be confident in it, but let's stop calling everybody heretics and false prophets if they disagree with us.
This topic here.
What did the founder of the Satanic Church say about Halloween? This will shock you. The founder of the Satanic Church, Anton LaVey, who also wrote the Satanic Bible, said this about parents who let their kids celebrate Halloween. He said, I'm so glad that Christians let their kids worship Satan at least one night out of the year. What does the Bible say about Halloween? It says this in 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 22, abstain from all appearance of evil. Ghosts, warlocks, dead spirits, all of that is celebrated on Halloween. We are supposed to abstain from the very appearance of evil. You're supposed to have nothing to do with that day or dressing up. Evil, coded evil is still evil, folks. Stay away from Halloween. Follow and subscribe for more.
People be back and forth on this one.
Halloween is the #1 time of year that has the most satanic sacrifices.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Apparently I heard in New York, the week leading up to Halloween, that is the #1 time where most homeless go missing as well. So basically, bruh, a lot of these people will go over there who are these like Satanists. They'll go to certain areas where they'll see homeless people. They'll bring like this unmarked vehicle and they'll tell these homeless people like, we got food and we can take you to a shelter and things like that. And apparently they will take these people to a random location and they will sacrifice them to the devil on Halloween.
Really?
Yes. Even this dude that was in New York, he was like some type of big banker. He doesn't even know what he's getting into. He ends up being invited to one of these satanic sacrifices.
Oh, damn.
So he's like, bro, I need to do something about this. So he ends up contacting a journalist. He ends up going back. He records the whole thing and there's like full audio. And he even says, when I do this, I'm more than likely gonna end up dead. Literally 3 days later, police end up finding this guy face down, dead inside of a creek.
No way.
Yeah, so they were like, bro, they got
him.
And I'm not even gonna lie, this actually just happened in New York. I think like a couple days ago, matter of fact. There was a box on the sidewalk and it had somebody's head in it.
What?
In New York recently, bro. Yeah, and notice, bro, it's a couple weeks before Halloween.
Whoa.
Halloween, October the 31st, is actually the only day in the year where the underworld has access to the overworld.
Oh yeah, I think I heard that before too.
So what happens is, like, all the dead are able to come to the surface, come to our world, and try to steal a soul from the living.
What?
So take this in, right? So the reason everybody dresses up is because the dead come and look for souls from the living.
And we camouflage?
So we camouflage and pretend we're dead. So we dress up as people from the underworld so that the dead won't take our souls. Now listen, right? Now, the reason we give candy out to everybody is because supposedly the only way to keep your soul is to give to the peasants. Like back in the day, they would give to the peasants. They would give food to the peasants because it's like cleaning your soul. It's like giving charity, right?
Oh, okay.
So that was a way to stop the dead from coming to you and stealing your soul.
Oh,
so that's why we give candy out. And then it's evolved over years. That's why we give candy out to the kids on Halloween with trick-or-treating and shit. And that's why everybody dresses up as like ghouls, monsters, and all that bullshit.
And all that bullshit.
So Halloween is the devil's holy day. That's his day. People get angry with me. They say, Father, it's just kids putting on costumes, trick-or-treating. No, not really, because you're really participating in his day. And why would you want to participate in anything that's giving glory to the devil? I had a couple of families in the last parish leave the school, withdrew from the school because we didn't have Halloween in the school.
Really?
And I'm like, this is your hill you're going to die on, is Halloween? Like, you're not going to do well in what's coming in the future if this is your big thing. They left. In New York City, where I'm from, there was an exorcist there when I was on Wall Street. After my conversion, I met with him. His name was Father James Labar, God rest his soul, pioneer exorcist of our day. And he told me that Halloween's the most dangerous season of the year for the homeless. I'm like, why is that? Are they eating bad candy? What's going on here? He's like, no. They have these vans that come around and they tell the homeless they're going to take them to a shelter. They've got whole big meals set up for them and showers, and they can wash their clothes and all this. And a lot of them get in the vans and go. And then they tie them up and they hold them for the 31st. And then they sacrifice them on the evening of Halloween to the devil. And it's like a perfect crime because nobody's looking for them.
Wow. That's crazy to hear about that.
The real reason for people dressing up on Halloween was to ward off ghosts. Back then, it wasn't to collect candy, get drunk, party. So when costumes used to look like this, some believed that the world of the gods became visible to humans, and humans didn't want to be seen, so they disguised themselves in these costumes. It was actually called All Hallows Eve, and now it's Halloween. So it's nice to know that in these days that we live in, it's just a dress-up party, costume celebration, funness. But it really was to just ward off ghosts and disguise themselves as a supernatural being.
Whatever you believe.
I understand that Halloween is based on pagan origins, right? So we look at that and some people say, well, it's a pagan holiday, so why would you celebrate Halloween if you celebrate your worship and things like that? Well, first thing I want to celebrate is, man, Martin Luther nailed the 95 Theses to the church. Like, that's such a cool part of church history. Like, that's a cool thing to look at. Now, that's not necessarily a part of Halloween. It's like, man, on October 31st, you also have that has occurred. But when it comes to Halloween, my first question is, what are you dressing up as? And what are you celebrating? There are probably people that still celebrate it like a pagan holiday. Satanism is real. There are pagans that worship pagan religions. So it's like, man, what are you doing? What's your heart posture? Is it like, oh, is the little 8-year-old boy that dresses up as Spider-Man that goes and gets Kit Kats and candy corn? Like, is that kid worshiping a pagan holiday? In my eyes, I'm like, man, that kid probably can't even spell pagan. He can't spell paganism. Like, what's that kid doing? His heart's so pure. He's probably dressing up as his favorite superhero and he's going to get some Hershey chocolate kisses. And we're so worried about people dressing up as Spider-Man and Superman more than we are unrepentant sin, and more than we are like people knowing Jesus. Like, yes, do I think people still celebrate Halloween in a very negative way and worship pagan gods? Absolutely. But I definitely think there are still a lot of people that just put out candy because it's tradition and they walk around in costumes and things like that, and that are harmless.
Is it really harmless though? That's the question.
Should Christians celebrate Halloween?
The word comes from the Old English All Hallows Eve, Halloween, and it's the eve of All Saints Day. In Catholic Christian life, we mark these holiest days of the year with a vigil. So this is the eve of a great solemnity, All Saints Day.
Now, some people say that we took a pagan holiday and we made it into a Christian holiday. Is there any truth to that? There's also these accusations about Christmas.
It's easy for people who hate Christ and his church to try to make these associations with similarities, but no, that's way too simple, and that's not exactly what happened. The late 19th century, early 20th century accusations about Halloween being a pagan thing that was somehow baptized by Roman Catholics. That was just Protestant vitriol against Catholic. Our country, the United States, was founded as a Protestant Christian nation, and there was a real persecution against the Catholic Christians. So when all of these immigrants were coming, they brought with them all of their Catholic custom Halloween. The most anti-Catholic Protestants were like, whoa, what is this?
Trick-or-treating. How is that Christian? Some people are concerned it has to do with some sort of witchcraft, occult reference.
That might be what people interpret it to mean now, and that's not where it comes from. In certain parts of European culture, on the vigil, the eve before All Saints Day, people would go asking door to door for little sweets to say, I'll pray for those who died in your family this last year if you'll give me a little sweet. It's perfectly normal across all of Catholic cultures to pray for the dead. Just because they died, they haven't. They're still members of the church and members of our family. And so that kind of door to door asking for gifts and exchanging prayers for those gifts for the dead, that's the Catholic underpinning foundation of trick-or-treating. Those words trick-or-treating, I think that's a much more modern invention.
It's so back and forth.
Halloween's coming up, and at Halloween we all carve pumpkins, but there's actually a hidden story of why we do it. It all comes from a legend from 19th century Ireland, where there was a man called Stingy Jack. That's this fella here. He invited the devil for a drink at a bar. He's called Stingy Jack for a reason, so he didn't want to pay for the drink, and it said that Jack somehow managed to convince the devil to turn himself into a coin, making out that he was going to use that to pay for the drink. But instead of using it to pay for his drinks, he put it in his pocket next to a silver cross, which meant that the devil couldn't get out the coin. Eventually, Jack allowed the devil out of the coin on the one condition that he wouldn't bother him for another year, and that if Jack died, the devil wouldn't claim his soul. A year goes by and the devil comes back, and Jack manages to trick the devil into climbing a tree for some fruit, and while the devil's in the tree, Jack carves a cross into the tree to stop the devil from getting out of it. And he told the devil that he'd help him get out the tree if he left him alone for another 10 years. But during that 10 years, Stingy Jack dies. And because in his life he was a really bad person, God wouldn't let him into heaven. And the devil was rightly still furious at Jack, but he decided the best punishment was to keep his word and not claim Jack's soul. And instead, the devil sent Jack into the dark night with only a coal to light his way. Jack put that coal into a carved turnip, and he's apparently been roaming the earth ever since. So then the Irish gave him the name Jack of the Lantern, which is where Jack-o'-lantern comes from. People started carving pumpkins into scary faces, and they'd put them outside the house or in their window to scare Jack away. How did I not know this until now?
All right, guys, that was another compilation. That was about Halloween. You made it this far, you a real one for real. I'm just gonna say that. Make sure you put that in the comments. Don't forget to put that. But it's a lot of back and forth on, should Christians celebrate Halloween? Should they not celebrate Halloween? Is it innocent? Should you just stay away from it altogether? Y'all gotta let me know in the comments what y'all think, because it's all over the place. You got some people saying yes, some people saying no, some people saying you shouldn't even partake at all. Some people saying it's innocent, kids don't really know what they're doing, they're just having fun. Y'all let me know in the comments, what do you think? Yes or no, and why? Explanation, you know what I'm saying? Like I said, I'm gonna be reading some of these, but if you made it this far, you a real one for real. Till next time, y'all be safe out there. Till next time, self-love and positivity. Fire Squad, I got you, and you know it. Boom.